The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Greetings, Matt Waldman. Week 11 in the books. Week 12 is upon us. Happy Thanksgiving to you, sir, or soon to be Thanksgiving. And hey, everybody, stop and take a minute and think what you have to be thankful for. One of the things I have to be thankful for is getting to spend a half hour every week with this wonderful man, Matt Waldman. You can find all his work, as you know, at mattwaldman.com or mattwaldman.rsp.com or footballdice.com or on the Twitter X thing at Matt Waldman. I'm Bob Harris. How are you?
Hey, I'm good because, you know, the big seminal moment when I knew that I was going to have a shot to actually do something in this space was getting to work for you. So that, because you were one of the first people I admired in this crazy hobby that has become a career for us. So I'm absolutely grateful for that.
Both very thankful for that, for having a great career like that, and also for dealing with the NFL on a weekly basis, because it's like the most sure thing ever. Well, or not. It's a weird week, everybody. There's 3 Thursday games, so be aware of that. Packers at Lions, Commanders at Cowboys, 49ers at Seahawks will be on Thanksgiving. And we have a Black Friday game. That means you have to beat somebody up for a pair of sneakers to get into the game.
I thought they already beat each other up anyway. You know, don't they have jails in all those places anyway?
I think they do. And that leaves us with a pretty minimal Sunday slate, or at least a diminished Sunday slate, but that's fine. We'll struggle through it all. My red zone, itch will be scratched to some degree, and in the degree possible, we'll scratch it. Some interesting stuff, Matt, that we will dig through here. So I think, the Cleveland Browns wanted us to believe that Dorian Thompson-Robinson would be better with a full week of preparation as compared to his first start, where it was kind of uncertainty whether Deshaun Watson would be there. So maybe they took a different approach with him. So this week, apparently, they might have been correct or semi-correct, or were they correct at all? Dorian Thompson-Robinson played reasonably well against your Pittsburgh Steelers there, young man.
Yeah, my Pittsburgh Steelers.
But
they were mine this week, at least in spirit, that's for sure, after the Browns handed them a loss last second. But yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson certainly played better, I thought. He was on the mark a little bit better. He managed the game a little bit better. He just had there were a lot of drop passes. There were some bad decisions for sure, but they schemed some things in his favor. The design runs were good ideas for him because he's not as big of a play runner as people, I think, want to say he is. He's quick, but not super fast. So if you can give him those plays that they gave, like pulling the center and the guard on a couple of third down plays, get him outside, he's quick enough to do that kind of thing. And so you get kind of a modified Lamar Jackson-esque type of player in style, just not in ability. If we can, is he going to lead them to playoff victories? Highly doubtful. Can he continue to grow and maybe become a player that they decide might be worth bridging between Deshaun Watson and somebody else? That could be possible long term.
For the moment. Feel him or fuck him as a viable fantasy, let's say second quarterback in a 2-quarterback league.
I would say fuck him even for that, but I would say I'm still feeling Amari Cooper and David Njoku as potential low-end starters with how he played this week. That's the more important part.
Well, I can work out a little busy. People don't. It's a trap. Be careful.
Gadget.
So big issues in Cincinnati, where everybody sadly, it was a lot of injuries, man. Not the least of which Joe Burrow going down with a torn ligament in his wrist. Jake Browning takes over. So just a couple of things. I mean, 2 things we seem to have a pretty good idea of. The Bengals don't have a lot of choices beyond Jake Browning, so they seem fairly committed to him for the rest of the season. Also, he spent the month of August working with the first-team offense since Burrow was unavailable with a calf injury, so at least he has some familiarity with the pieces. I did notice a willingness to throw the ball right? Like he put one out to Jamar Chase down the field. It was a yard or two out of bounds. Okay. But he had that willingness. I guess, so nobody should be out chasing Jake Browning, I'm guessing, if they're not chasing Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but feeling or fucking the fantasy fortunes of Jamar Chase in particular going forward.
I think they'll make it work because Jake Browning can move to his left reasonably well and seems willing and competent at doing so as a thrower. On top of that, he's good at being able to make leverage throws, those types of throws in the middle of the field where the defender is in a position where you can fit the ball into a tighter window. And I think that he'll find a way to do that with Jamar Chase because he was finding ways to do it with Tanner Hudson and with Trenton Irwin. And someone who he was very familiar with because they've been second-team offensive guys, and you could see that they were working with him a good bit. So from that perspective, I would say that Trenton Irwin has a little bit of an elevated potential value, meaning that maybe a bye-week guy in a 4-wide receiver league thing, you could look at him that way. But I would expect him to get on the same page with the starters, and the main starter being Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. Those two guys, I think you should probably knock them down maybe a tier and a half with Browning at the helm until you see, how well they scheme this offense until further notice, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You can't trade anybody because you'll get nothing in return.
No.
People tend to be smart like that. You invoked his name, so I'm going to go to the great Tanner Hudson, apparently. I have a long-standing theory here, Matt. If their team has 3 tight ends, they have 0 tight ends for my purposes.
Sure.
The Bengals have 3, Irv Smith Jr. and Drew Sample to go along with Tanner Hudson, but Tanner Hudson seems to be establishing himself as a go-to guy. I mean, it was happening with Burrow a little bit. I want to say 2 weeks ago, all his passes went for first downs. I didn't see what this week's was, but is he a playable piece? Do you feel him as that, or is it just like such an emergency that you would have to be in too dire straits to even contemplate those circumstances?
It's funny because that whole idea, if you have 3 tight ends, you probably don't have any, is really good advice. At the same time, you have to think that, do they really have 3 tight ends? Because Irv Smith, maybe he should just qualify as a wide receiver. And then Drew Sample, might be the guy that you worry about a little bit more. Drew Sample right now is tight end 19, over the past 3 weeks. Irv Smith is tight end 26. That tells me neither of those really make much of a difference. But Tanner Hudson is tight end 14 since week 9. So for the past 3 weeks, he's put up borderline starter production and really was only 1 point from Mark Andrews' production over the past 3 weeks. Now, Andrews was 12th and got hurt early in the first half of the game. So, still, that's not much of a margin between also ran and starter. I would say I'm feeling him because of the way they're targeting him. They're using him on more and more intermediate routes, some double moves, some plays in tight windows. He's the one that I feel like they trust as the receiver, whereas Sample is more of a play action blocker, and Irv Smith is a tease. That's basically how we would put that, right?
Yeah, I guess in a league, not everyone gets to have T.J. Hawkinson. Nobody has Mark Andrews. We'll talk more about that. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Sam Laporta, Dalton Schultz, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride. Although Zach Ertz is eligible to come off IR this week, I'll remind you everyone. David Njoku. I mean,
there's at least 2 annoying teams that have kept 2 or 3 tight ends on their roster.
Well,
to the detriment of you. Right.
Let me ask you this. Like, if you were down to like the stems and seeds here of the tight end position, if you were sorting through guys like Cade Otton or Luke Musgrave or Tyler Higbee, and Tanner Hudson was in that mix, would Tanner Hudson be a choice?
I would say Tanner Hudson over Tyler Higbee, yes, because he's a little bit inconsistent for my taste with Matthew Stafford, as much as I like his talent. Musgrave, I would say I'm pretty even between him and Musgrave, only because
Tucker Kraft all of a sudden does something. So
yeah, and those 3 they've got 4 good receivers who are a little bit more dangerous than what Musgrave's doing.
None of those Christian Watson.
he might be fourth on that list, actually. So, yeah, I mean, and Otten's a little bit he's been better lately, but, I would say if you're looking at Tyler Conklin, Luke Musgrave, or Tanner Hudson, I would seriously consider Hudson at least for a week, because I think you could probably get Conklin or Musgrave again.
All right, fair enough. So, you did the Mark Andrews thing, so let's go to that grouping of tight ends in Baltimore now. Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. Kolar kind of the overlooked piece there, although he's more productive coming back. So, feeling this. Isaiah Likely is a product of a single impressive offseason, and we're all still looking for that player, and he no longer exists. You feel that or fuck that? He's still a thing.
I'm feeling what you just said, because, he's a wide receiver in a tight end's body, and maybe more like a tight end with a wide receiver's body. However you want to put it, he's not really a true tight end. He's a guy that you want to have out in space who can use his quickness, but he's not great at maybe catching the ball in tight windows. I think that's more Charlie Kolar's deal. Charlie Kolar, for me, compared favorably to Mark Andrews pre-draft. That was kind of the guy that I thought his aspirational comparison was. So when they drafted him ahead of Isaiah Likely, I thought, that makes sense. They've got a player they could develop into a redundancy plan. And then he got hurt, and then Likely started to do some nice things in camp, showing off his athletic ability, which usually impresses everybody. Well, they've got 4 receivers who are better in the Isaiah Likely role that he had last year, by the name of Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr., Nelson Aguilar, and Rashad Bateman. Considering that Mark Andrews isn't much of a blocker, I mean, he's competent, but he's not. That's not what they're missing from him. Then they're not really going to be replacing him with Likely as often. He's going to get a few schemed looks each game, but it's going to be enough that you're going to still be taking Tanner Hudson over him.
Yeah, fuck all these guys as one-to-one replacements for Mark Andrews. I mean, if you listen to Lamar Jackson's post-game press conference, he told you the story. It's peanut butter to his jelly. All the analogies rolled out of his mouth, and he's correct. I mean, they just seem to have that, that simpatico going. So, that said, Odell Beckham looked like he has a little bit of chemistry going with Lamar Jackson all of a sudden. I want to think, like Rashad Bateman seems like, be very close, on some plays. Nelson Aguilar made a totally, amazing play, but seems like kind of
it's like a tip pass for him to
right,
do it.
Right.
Yes.
It seems like really super fortuitous. So are we feeling Odell Beckham rising into the Zay Flowers range as a playable weekly commodity?
Totally feeling it. He was wide receiver 11 during the past 3 weeks in fantasy. And, maybe he needed that year off. I was talking with Brandon Angelo, also an RSP podcast co-host who is an athletic performance specialist and works with high-end athletes. And he said, look, when we say a player is healthy, like, say, Tony Pollard, and say he's healthy, that's a low bar. That just means he can functionally move around and not get hurt. It doesn't mean necessarily that his high-end athletic ability has returned. And with certain players who are used to an elite level of play and have shown enough in their careers, maybe like, say, Michael Thomas, who said, fuck you, Sean Payton. I know you want me back at that low bar, and you're irked with me for not doing it. But you know how detail-oriented I am. You know how much of a perfectionist I've been. I'm going to wait until I'm much closer to that high bar of athletic ability to come back. I think Odell Beckham Jr. did the same thing. And then rumors started that maybe his knee was being held together by duct tape that you had to kind of press together on either side while it was starting to move. It is, but old duct tape can be kind of peel off a little bit. You got to press it on.
It's called baling wire.
Yes, but you got exactly. But it works. But you got to press it on a little bit. I think that's what people were worried about and saying. But looking at him the past 3 weeks, obviously the increased incident of re-injury can occur. It's not so high that you would say it's prohibitive, especially if the Ravens decide to sign him among a bunch of teams that were interested, and how he looks with the route running.
They gave him real money. They gave him real money because he probably said, I'm going to get real healthy. And I think that he has, and he's showing it.
And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's a top 15 receiver down the stretch. I think it's a safe bet to say he's a top 24 fantasy receiver from this point moving forward as long as he stays healthy. And I would take the bet that he will.
I think at this point of the season, many people don't have a lot of great options.
No.
He might be that for those who don't have those. Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce getting closer to his return, but we now have one lousy game, two pretty damn good games. Let's rephrase that. A lousy game, a fantastic game, and a damn good game against a team he should have had a damn good game against, right? So Devin Singletary against the Cardinals yesterday, another 100-yard game, had a touchdown. Feeling him over Dameon Pierce rest of the season.
Yeah, I am. And I like Dameon Pierce generally, in theory, more than Devin Singletary. But look, Devin Singletary came to Houston because he liked this offense. He liked what he saw there. And with Jacksonville, Denver, and the Jets up next, I think that and Tennessee also on that list in Week 15, I think Devin Singletary has at least a favorable split with Dameon Pierce at this point of the season moving forward. It may be a risk, but I'll say so because the thing about Dameon Pierce or about Devin Singletary that has always been great is that despite the fact that he's short, he's small, he's slow, he's not extraordinarily quick, and he's not very powerful, is that he has tremendous footwork and vision and really understands how to set up blocks. And he does run with a lot of effort. So when you see all that, he is the outlier. Like if you want an example of like in a dictionary for football scouting terms of outlier, when you say you know how compensatory factors of one or two things can be so good that they completely compensate for all the things that are not good enough, he would be the picture in that entry.
I feel like the Texans have a history of that. Maybe it's that Kubiak offense they ran before, the Shanahan-style offense where Dominic Williams would show up, or
Slayton,
or Arian Foster, or Slayton. You know, it just seemed like whoever showed up could kind of do the job. So I don't want to oversimplify, but maybe that's where we're at in this one. I'm with you, Devin Singletary, feeling him like again. Did I mention we're heading into Week 12?
And his nickname's Motor. Come on.
Nickname's Motor.
How the fuck do you not start a guy named Motor?
Here's a fuck it.
Okay.
All you NFL insiders out there who feel like it makes you look cooler to use everybody's nickname because you feel like, hey, I know him better than you do. Stop it. We all know the nicknames. You don't need to tell us. Oh, Demarius Pop Douglas. Okay, I know. Motor. Okay, I know. Get off my back. There, old man Ranto.
You're gonna get too old if you start using middle names. Okay, so
this is true.
Okay.
Rondale Moore. So didn't get all the targets. Greg Dortch took all the targets in this one. Here's me feeling this. It was the fucking injuries, right? It was Michael Wilson and Zach Pascal who usually play the outside role and kind of forced the Cardinals' hands. They used a combination of Moore and Greg Dortch, to outside, both slot guys working outside. I think Dortch was more inside than outside in this game, just based on anecdotal evidence. So was that maybe more responsible for the switch in numbers? Was Rondale Moore playing outside his normal spot?
Yeah, I think so. They needed him more as a deep threat, and he certainly succeeded on a nice
big play.
Nice sluggo route there. But yeah, it was Dortch who got more of the plays. And honestly, I like Dortch a little bit more than Rondale Moore at this stage of their development, and I wish they would use Dortch a little more often. That said, you're right. It's Michael Wilson injury is the biggest issue. I would just say fuck it with Rondale Moore right now. I mean, if you have him, keep him. If you're desperate and you just if you're looking for depth, like I added Rondale Moore in a couple dynasty leagues but I'm like 8 wide receivers deep and just decided that I wanted one more who just on the potential for them to pop, I'll take it. But honestly, no, I'd say fuck it. Look elsewhere unless you're totally desperate.
Quentin Johnston. Let me handle this one for you, Matt. Quentin Johnston, fielder, fucking dude can't fucking catch. Matt Waldman's been telling you that all year. He needs to work on that. How far does he have to go, Matt?
He has a pretty good ways to go because he's lost the confidence in even just attacking the ball with overhand technique in almost any situation right now. And it just sucks for him because I'm feeling him long term as an underneath scheme dependent receiver who can, run slants and screens and RPOs and comeback routes and maybe eventually get pretty good at that and use his athletic ability to win there. But if you want him to be the superstar that people were drafting him to be, he's going to have to prove that he not only make the correct attack to get the ball, but it may come down to tracking, because I think he has difficulty discerning when to stop, turn, and attack the football and use the proper attack. And that often comes down to that he's just not tracking vertical targets well. And if that's the problem, that's a Sammy Coates type of problem. And we saw what happened to Sammy Coates in his career, or Jake Reed, who worked really hard to try to get better at that. But it was very hard for him to really achieve it. He got closest. But if you have trouble tracking the football, that's a big problem, and I think that we may have questions about that with Johnson moving forward. So if you have him, keep him, because you've invested enough in him. Unless somebody's willing to give you what I think most people won't, you're just riding this train out and hoping that he can improve. But I would say if you're looking to acquire him, think of him as a number 2 wide receiver at best, and probably more safely acquire him at the value of a number 3, because that's, I think, his baseline.
Let me sum this up. Ceiling. Matt Waldman hates Quentin Johnston. Moving on.
You know who I love?
Me.
Yeah, I do. I also love Khalil Shakir.
So I do too, and it was a good game for him. Right? The big 3-catch, 115 yards, had the great, huge touchdown play. Here's my problem with Khalil Shakir. He doesn't appear to be as popular on the Buffalo pecking order as he is on this particular podcast. He's got 25 targets on the year, no more than 4 in a single game. How do we feel him as a fantasy player?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, and I'm glad you gave that retort. That's why I love you, is that he's actually been, the past 3 weeks, wide receiver 24 in fantasy.
Is it sustainable with that narrow band of activity, Matt Waldman?
Yes, and the reason,
you love him too much.
Okay, here's the reason why. This was the first week that the Bills actually listed him as a starter. So even though the past 5 weeks he's been a fantasy playable option with a low bandwidth of volume, it was only this week that he was actually listed on the team's depth chart as a starter. So for me, that means that he's been kind of been inserted in over Deonta Hardy and Trent Sherfield,
so.
Two also ran type of guys, but they've been in the mix too. Now I think that's over. And if you notice that Gabriel Davis didn't get much at all,
no.
And I think Joe Brady, being the changing of the guard in this offense, said, you have this really good football player named Khalil Shakir who gets open, who we've realized in recent weeks wasn't getting targeted in the manner that he should have been. And they've started to figure that out a little bit more, and he's responding. And, you're all in the building telling me that he dropped balls in practice, and that's why y'all didn't give him a starting gig. But I look at his film from the past year and a half, and all I see are big plays and big catches in games. Maybe since he can match up well one-on-one and do all the things that we've talked about on this show repeatedly, maybe it's time we actually put him in the lineup and let him be that guy. And I think we've seen him respond. So, yeah, I'm taking the chance. And
TLDR,
yeah.
Matt Waldman hates Quentin Johnston, loves Khalil Shakir. I think that's all anyone needs to know, sir. What about... Oh, all right.
You're just hungry. That's all it is. Thursday isn't here yet. Let me talk at least until then.
I'm with you.
Okay.
So, all right. We're playing Devon Achane and Keaton Mitchell on narrow bands of activity. So some of the things we might like about them, we also like about Khalil Shakir. It's a great offense and super explosive and very productive. And by the way, this week, I don't want any questions about should I start Josh Dobbs over Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield over Josh Allen or whatever. Next time you feel like getting all in your feelings because the thing is aren't going great for a team in the moment, go out and look at your league statistics and see that Josh Allen is like the number 1 or number 2 points per game scoring quarterback in fantasy football, and calm down.
Ricky Bobby won races.
Calm down.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of getting excited, Austin Trammell. So Cooper Kupp left this game. We saw a lot of Austin Trammell. What do you think?
Well, I like him as a prospect. I know Alex Brown, the director at SMU, who worked with him at Rice, the recruiting director there, worked with him at Rice, and just talked about he had the NFL athletic ability that you would want. He had some good training camps with the Falcons before getting added by the Rams, and has just kind of hung on to that roster spot for a while. I think there's a path for him to be able to have some fantasy success games, but I would say it's so less likely that you need to wait on him kind of the way Bob would like you to wait on Khalil Shakir.
There you have it. Seems fair. Justin Fields. First game back, he's about to be evaluated. Matt, he's the evaluation process. The Bears have big decisions to make after the season. I feel like Justin Fields, just me, my feel it is Justin Fields kind of like said, "Oh yeah, evaluate this."
Yeah, and I hope the Bears do, and in typical Bears fashion, decide not to let him stay, and that Arthur Smith has enough brains to FedEx his ass down here.
Arthur Smith's going to be around that long.
Yeah, I think he will, but but we'll see. The PR, he might have ruined it with his PR friendly attitude.
I'm growing a mustache right now in response.
Yeah, see, there you go. But no, I would love to see Justin Fields in a place like Atlanta or in Minnesota. Those would be awesome settings, possibly from short. Everybody's all up, loving the whole aerospace engineer guy, but Fields looked great. I thought he was wheeling and dealing in terms of his ability to throw on the move, to be able to win as a runner. He had the game-winning throw, but Tyler Scott slowed down mid-break and had to try and reaccelerate, and then wound up diving and missing for it. And that was, he had the throw right there. He made plays to put his team in position to win the game, and his team just didn't respond. And I think that he may not be the ideal quarterback that some teams want, but teams like the Bears have fixated so much on having a quarterback that they've never had, or at least haven't had since Sid Luckman or Jim McMahon, that they may be over-idealizing what they need from the position, and Fields is good enough.
Yes.
More than good enough. Just different. Just a little different than what they envision.
All right, so let's get into the Jared Goff. 3 interceptions. Oh, my gosh. At home, that's not supposed to happen. Still, the Lions win this game. He threw 2 touchdowns. Feel or fuck Jared Goff going forward?
Feeling Jared Goff, fuck Sean McVay for making him into a scapegoat puppet that he did, because when you look at Goff, 2 of those interceptions, one was basically Sam Laporta running into the safety, colliding and missing the spot that Goff made the anticipatory throw to. Another one was he was basically hit while he was throwing, and it altered the throw. But at the same time, I'll say this: he also had where he shouldn't have had 2 of the 3 interceptions. There were 2 other throws he made that should have been 2 interceptions. One of them could have been a pick 6 from his own end zone, right. From Quentin Johnston, who's a pretty good cornerback. So he had a bad day. But I'll say this: he brought them back. He read blitz as well. He just ignored all the noise. He didn't crumble like Sean McVay liked to say that he would.
Or like Sean McVay did in the face of what he perceived to be Jared Goff crumbling. Look, this is a guy who I think is fully rehabilitated himself, or his reputation at least. I don't know if he needed to rehabilitate his game. I think the game was always there. There was a bad game. It was in the Super Bowl. It was on the biggest stage in the world. I get it. And I don't know how much of that was his fault, how much was Sean McVay's fault, or how much credit Bill Belichick gets for coming up with a defense to shut down the innovative Sean McVay offense.
Oh, even the same game plan that they were running that was found out by Detroit, like in week 14 of that Super Bowl year. Yeah, and he came into it like that. Yeah, okay, that's fine. He came in.
point of view here, people.
Yeah, well, he basically came into like a work party in a Halloween costume. That was what Sean McVay did with that scheme. It was just stupid. So, but then he had to blame Goff so he didn't look like a fool. That's fine.
So I've been having a number of conversations with people who just randomly were reaching out to me about Jameson Williams, and I think the conversations were, he's starting to look a little busty here, right? Did he rehabilitate himself, or is he in the process of rehabilitating himself with a good performance, or at least a good catch?
The good catch makes him monitorable. Just continue monitoring him. Right, that's it.
It does appear, though, that like Josh Reynolds has fallen behind, at least in terms of production, to where he was earlier in the year. And this opens the door to Jameson Williams getting the opportunity to turn into the Jameson Williams the Lions drafted Jameson Williams to be.
They're giving him a chance.
I feel that.
They're giving him a chance. That's what I would say. I don't know if he's going to
cash in. He still feels a little busty to me.
Yeah.
Jaylen Warren, on the other hand, looks like he's a busty outie. He looked fantastic yesterday. Everything that everyone's, all the superlatives that have been applied to him, he flashed. Most of it on a single play even. You feeling Jaylen Warren over Najee Harris going forward?
I'm starting to, yeah. And I've been a Najee Harris standby, basically. And I still think Najee Harris is a good player and worthwhile. But in this offense, which is a crap offense, I mean, literally when you have when you have former quarterbacks and scouts basically saying this is one of the bottom 5 offensive schemes that I have ever looked at in terms of just how lack of detail, lack of simplicity, dumb things that happen with it. That's not a good sign. Warren seems to make the most of what's going on, and there were a lot of plays when I saw him in the past year and a half that I go, well, it looks like he's getting the opportunities where the defense isn't expecting him to get the ball, and he's getting opportunities in space. And I think that was true. But the more and more that he's getting the ball in situations where defenses are expecting him to get it, he's making good on those plays. And to me, that's proof that he's a worthwhile back, and he has gotten better since his time at Utah State and Oklahoma State. He's a better decision maker. He just keeps getting better, and I finally have to look at him and say, yeah, he's legit. He's a legit guy, and I feel like his fantasy production should stay relatively, consistent.
I feel like the Steelers' offense still is not as good as it needs to be to support 2 running backs from a fantasy perspective, yet here we are. I think it is just like somehow they are mysteriously winning games with falling behind on. They didn't win this one. I get
cheating.
It. But without being outproduced on offense every single week, and I know Najee is not very happy about it. If you saw his quotes, he used language often used on this podcast to describe his feelings about the offense. He's not happy. And I don't think anyone in Pittsburgh is, but a lot of this is Kenny Pickett related. Guy hasn't thrown 2 touchdowns. Yeah. Has he thrown 2 touchdown passes in a game?
I don't know. It's been a while since we've seen. All I know is Jake Sternberger went on there, the former tight end there at Pittsburgh and Green Bay, and compared and contrasted the 2 offensive schemes. And he said that literally Matt Canada's offense was one where it was so basic that there was really no detail of instruction on things that are very important, like route depths and what types of coverages you should be making adjustments towards, things like that he had to take tests on in Green Bay. But in Pittsburgh, he was like, really? That's it?
I want to say, just like while you're saying this, it brings to mind the quotes. I should bring them up so I don't destroy them. Najee Harris opens up with his frustration with the Steelers offense. I don't have the words in front of me, but needless to say, he's, without saying those words, expressed similar views. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll see how this offense plays out. Maybe there will be some adjustments going forward in the future. I don't think Mike Tomlin is not a knee-jerk reaction guy.
No.
So, but this has been a slow motion train wreck.
Yeah,
it's been he's given it every opportunity. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba, are you feeling that we're 1 year closer to next year when Jaxon Smith-Njigba will be a great player?
Yes, I think we are. I think we are, but I think we're getting game by game closer to him being a worthwhile fantasy option. Right now, we're seeing him make good plays. We're seeing him getting more involved in the offense. It's just that Geno Smith isn't as reliable as he was last year, and there we have it. So you can take your chances with him. Probably better as a number 4, but if you need to take your chances with him as a wide receiver 3, I think you could do worse.
All right, Puka Nacua, what is he going forward?
He's a wide receiver 1 going forward as long as Cooper Kupp ain't in the lineup, and you saw that in the second half of this game. Suddenly they ramped that shit back up again. So I think, just as you were about to say, Puka Nacua is not doing even as well as Khalil Shakir over the past 5 games, which I noticed. I looked this up because I had a feeling Bob was going to go, you like those narrow bandwidth players. He was actually ahead of Puka, but now Puka, but hey, I got to study the best. But Puka certainly. You
have a lot of tape on me. It's not fair.
Yeah, but Puka did a good. Started to get more looks because of Kupp being out. He's the offense now, so deal with it, feel it.
I feel it too. I'm good to go with this. All right, are you feeling Thanksgiving coming? Do you have huge plans?
Look, my daughter and my grandkids are coming up, and we're gonna have a good time there. I might get a pernil made. Have you ever had pernil? It's a Puerto Rican dish. So it's a roasted pork where the skin, you could play snare drum on it. Apparently, it's that crispy.
Crackle.
Yeah. So that should be fun. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay. I'll be cooking turkey and all the fixings. So I gotta hurry to get things work.
You will hear me on Sirius XM's Fantasy Sports Radio on Thanksgiving night from 11 to 1 a.m.
Well, if you need a last minute guest, call me up. I have a feeling I'll probably be around. So
the wheels of industry roll on. All right, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
Appreciate y'all listening. Love everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.